you remember, we've already talked about how our country expanded through the Louisiana Purchase, which was explored by Lewis and Clark, how Texas gained independence from Mexico, and how settlers traveled to the west using the Oregon Trail. Now we're going to talk about something called manifest destiny, which was a theory that was developed in the 1840s. Now it was basically a term for an attitude people had during the expansionism time of the 19th century. Basically, it meant that the U.S. not only could, but should stretch from coast to coast. It was a phrase that was first used by a newspaper writer named John L. O. Sullivan, who wrote an article about the annexation of Texas. And what it did was it helped fuel an attitude that we should settle west, that it was okay to remove Native Americans from their land, and it also helped justify the war with Mexico. It was also a thought that white civilization and the United States government was superior and should be spread across the whole continent. Now, President James Polk actually campaigned and was elected in 1844 on this idea that we should expand. He wanted to annex Texas, which means basically bring Texas as part of the United States, and he was also wanted to claim all of Oregon, which was at that point under joint occupation by U.S. and Great Britain. Now, the Texans living in Texas had wanted to be annexed before, but Mexico had never officially recognized Texas as independent. So it was risky. War could happen if the United States decided to annex it. But manifest destiny and Polk kind of changed this mindset, and Texas was annexed in 1845. Shortly after that, Oregon was divided at the 49th parallel. A compromise was reached so there wouldn't be a war, and from that, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho came from the split. Now, the Mexican War was another result of the idea of manifest destiny. Basically, a border dispute started a war which was not really that big of a dispute, but kind of an excuse for the United States to try and gain more territory from Mexico. The border dispute was whether the border with Mexico was at the Rio Grande or the Nueces River, which was 200 miles north. So it started with a border skirmish at the Rio Grande. The United States had set up forts along the Rio Grande, and Mexico attacked it, and the U.S. then used that as an excuse to declare war. Polk had wanted New Mexico for a while and offered $30 million for it. But instead, when Mexico wouldn't take that, Polk provoked Mexico into war, again to fulfill this manifest destiny. General Zachary Taylor led the troops, and the United States had a superior military. There were few Mexicans living in the disputed area, so they were able to take that land easily. Same with California. Santa Anna was once again in charge as President of Mexico. By September of 1847, the United States troops had reached Mexico City, and the last battle took place at Mexico City's Chapultepec Castle, which was kind of like the Alamo in reverse. The war altogether took about a year, with most battles being fought in northern Mexico. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed in 1848, and it was very favorable to the United States. California and New Mexico was given to the United States. It was called the Mexican Cession. Also, this included parts of Arizona, Colorado, and Wyoming. The United States agreed to pay Mexico $15 million for this, and also agreed to respect the rights of Mexicans living on land. Of course, this didn't really happen.